celebrating our Independence Day the only way we know how. It's V'ger Please, A Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant.
What's the way we know?
Chaining ourselves to our desk kind of late on a Friday night so that we can finally bang out a recording after 3 weeks.
I thought you were going to say blowing shit up. I'm hearing those fireworks in your background.
Yeah, I'm Joseph, by the way.
I'm your co-patriot, Peter.
Yes, and thanks to everybody in the sound of our voice who were patient with us. We had to take an unscheduled summer break, I guess would be the way to describe it. Rural life got in the way, and I will not bore you with the details, except that, of course, it appeared on TMZ, which our members of our trauma support group were able to witness. So there's your plug, by the way. Come join the trauma support group. And speaking of them, I appreciate all of our listeners, but are the ones that have joined us on our little Facebook group. Thanks to all of you in particular. Warm, kind words as we had to kind of put the podcast aside for an unscheduled absence while we dealt with real life. It was cool for everyone to stay engaged and just let us know they were here for us when we got back. So here we are. We're back, and we are excited.
Very excited because Season 5, Episode 11, Latent Image, pretty fucking great.
I consider it the finest episode of Star Trek regarding the topic of AI as a concept.
That's bold words, Joseph. Are you saying that this episode was better than the last episode of Picard where Cthulhu Robo-Horus peeked out of a wormhole and threatened to Reaper the entire galaxy? You saying that this was somehow better than that master stroke?
I'm not even in the same room with you, and I couldn't hold a straight face through you saying that. Oh Jesus, oh man.
No, but for real, man. There's
obviously, that's some fine television.
No, but there's some really, really good AI entries, specifically out of TNG, because we had Data as such a front and center character. If you're going to go top 3 Data AI-ish episodes, you'd set off air your number 1 spot on that would have been Measure of a Man, which I agree Once Upon a Time was really great until it became such a huge centerpiece in Picard that I feel it somehow slipped in its credibility towards me. What else is good ones out of there?
The Daughter or Offspring.
Offspring. Solid.
But the and then the Moriarty episodes, I think, as well.
Absolutely, yes.
But I would definitely consider this greater than all of them, and I think I will return to this topic with you once we reach, I think, the inflection point in the episode where it elevates. And you can decide if I'm full of shit or not at that point. Well, no, I take it back. I am full of shit, Peter. If I'm full of shit on this, I expect you'll tell me then. But it's still a fantastic Trek, and I am very excited to talk to you about it.
I'm looking at the Memory Alpha on this because there's some really great directing choices and photography choices that happen along with this. We got teleplay by Joe Manowski, story by Eileen Connors, Bran Braga, and Joe Manowski, and then directed by Mike V'ger. As one V'ger to another V'ger, you did a great job on this, Mike. This is a strong entry. I was really actually surprised right now not to see Kenneth Bewilder on here.
His only other episode before this was Year of Hell Part 2. It was the last time he's so. That kind of that checks out. That checks out. I like it. The episode begins with the continuing saga of the Doctor's hollow imager finally kind of factoring into the plot in a more substantial way.
I call this his photography fetish, and you are absolutely right. And this is, again, credit where credit's due. Once upon a time, there was no groundwork laid for anything, and it wasn't until season, 2, where we got the beginning of the Seska arc, where we started planting seeds that would later come into greater fruition, and absolutely that's what we're seeing here. We have a well-established photography thing the Doctor's been involved with, and good on them for making this happen so creditably.
So the idea here is that the Doctor is taking these full body images of all the crew members to assist him in doing his diagnostics of each crew member's health and be able to assist him in treating them in the future. And he gets to Harry Kim. Harry Kim gets his image taken. They do a very 90s special effect of like, it's the skeleton and then the inside and then there's skin and then it's the person. Not impressive at the time, and certainly doesn't hold up now, but we'll forgive it. But the doctor notices as part of this that it appears Harry Kim has had a neurosurgery procedure that he recognizes because the doctor invented it, so only he could have done it. And he doesn't remember giving Harry Kim such a surgery, which is obviously a problem for him. And the episode begins with this mystery. And, you know, I think it plays into the Trek tropes quite well here at first. Now, Peter, as somebody who went into this blind, I assume blind. Did you go into this blind? Did you know what this was going to be about?
No, absolutely not.
So were you fooled?
I take that back.
I guess that's my key question. Were you fooled by the first 20 minutes?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
You know, the capsule on this made it pretty clear, I think, that it was going to be a situation where Voyager crew members were tampering with the doctor's memory and that, you know, he's being left out. There was another TNG episode, and you have to forgive me, I'm not remembering it, but it's the one where Data was supposed to forget something and he discovers clues and drags the crew back into a region of space where they had agreed to have their memory wiped and endangers everybody. And that's what I thought we were going to be getting shades of here. And they do a great job in the beginning of kind of faking you out with that. This entire opening scene, the pre-credit scene, is great in my book. I liked the beginning segment where you've got like Paris and B'Elanna and some other rando crews. You got Naomi Wildman, and like you said, we end on Harry Kim. I like that every time the shutter would flash, it was a new person, and they're just the looks on their face are kind of like indulging this guy. Everybody knows about his photography. Nobody really wants to be involved with it. Now he's dragging it into work, and like the reluctance on people's faces for it. But in specifically the Naomi Wildman's portion, I think what they're really doing is driving home the fact that the doctor is human. The doctor is good-natured, and even though he's still a little prickly, it's like lovably prickly, and that he has had so much growth from this two-dimensional appliance that he started off with in becoming one of the warmest and most compassionate, I would say, members of the crew. And all of it feels very earned and very relevant, and I cannot disagree with any of his portrayal in this beginning, because of course you need to build the stakes for when you find out the wrong that's being done to him later on.
I agree, and I think that's ultimately what this episode's about, right? Like that's the whole premise is this personality that Doctor is established, and that we know him, and we have seen that change, and that his evolution has become evident through both his performance and the writing and the situations that they've placed him in. And the brilliance of the episode comes in acknowledging that in a way that feels perfectly natural. So much of the criticisms that we level at Star Trek and then specifically at Voyager is you didn't set it up, this feels forced, this just is like problem of the week, why is this happening, right? Those are not questions you have to ask about this episode at all. Not one bit. Everything in this episode, aside from like a slight continuity error about the time period in which the flashback happens, and essentially, let's just spoil it now, where's Cass, right? Like Cass would have been on the ship at the time. Obviously, they can't use her anymore, so they kind of just overlook that. Aside from that, I don't think there's anything you can say about this episode that says this isn't a very lived-in episode of the show that really rewards the long-term fan.
There's two things that I can nitpick, and I'll save it for later in there. But it's I'll wait till those fireworks are over. It is the Doctor's got one of the best story arcs out of any Star Trek character, and Delta Flyers, which I've been listening to weekly, not even they can really answer the question of was the Doctor supposed to take this journey originally in the vision that the showrunners had, or was it the fact that Robert Picardo brought so much to the table that they couldn't help but give him a better character? Yeah. And again, Voyager traditionally has been terrible about character growth and any of that, but that's been the one constant, that every episode the Doctor is a little more human, a little bit better, a little bit more than he was the episode before, and that's been really great to watch. So they play the trick where, oh my gosh, there's this chilling mystery now that someone has operated on Harry Kim. He doesn't seem to remember. The Doctor doesn't know anything about it. The Doctor takes a closer look, and we have certainly seen situations in Star Trek before where you've got outside alien parties abducting people, experimenting on them. Like, you've had at least 2 rounds of space Nazi Mengele.
You don't know if this is a space Nazi Mengele memory thing. You have no idea. This is a problem. You have to tell the boss.
Yeah, but I will say that you can immediately tell that the way that Harry's looking, that's like, oh shit, he's remembering. And like,
yeah, it was fun to be watching this episode with all of that in mind, and then looking at the face acting of everybody as he starts to like pick it up, and he starts talking to other characters about it. He tells Janeway when he goes to her office to do her physical, and you get that first sense of like she's kind of like stops cold and starts staring at the wall as she like explains, "Oh, I just found out I did this surgery to Harry Kim and I don't remember it." And
which she's like, seems like real casual the way he brings it up with the captain. Like, I was expecting him to go like, I found a major issue. We need to stop everything we're doing right now and look into this. Not like, hey, we're going to go through half your physical and then I'm going to casually bring up, the fact that someone's been playing around in your ops officer's neck.
Well, I mean, it could be that he's playing off of like, there could be a rational explanation. Like, I do have a memory file for that. That's for some reason because, we've been through so much shit got damaged and I just need to recover it or something. Maybe a little bit of that could have helped out.
But Harry didn't remember either. And that's why I think it really should have been a priority conversation point.
The next person he goes to visit after talking to Janeway is 7 of 9, who is, the second most important character in this episode. And I think well used as her status as a reclaimed Borg droid. The fuck is wrong with me? Reclaimed Borg drone, and the Doctor's closest confidant at this point. And goes to her in Astrometrics and be like, hey, can you help me figure out like why I did neurosurgery to Harry Kim and I don't remember it? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to finish this work up and I'll come to you in an hour to help you out. And they have a little bit of interaction where he's like, mock offended that she won't help right away and kind of like guilts her a little bit and be like, fine, I'll help you in an hour. It's like showing his personality and interactions with 7 and the level that's risen to. And an hour later, 7 shows up in sickbay. Doctor's not on. Reactivates him, says, hey, I'm here. You want me to help you out? And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you asked me an hour ago to help you figure out why you did neurosurgery to Harry Kim and you don't remember it? He's like, well, I don't remember asking you for help about that either. And they start to put together that his short-term memories were deleted, so he didn't remember any of those things. And as they start their I guess you call it forensic investigation, is that he's got memory files from a specific star date that this would have occurred that are being denied to him, and he has these residual like pictures from his holo imager that were deleted, but he has like the leftover like cache files or whatever, and sees these hazy images of a Starfleet ensign that he has no remembrance of whatsoever, along with a sinister looking alien with a big like giant alien
triple dildo rifle. Gun.
Yeah, triple dildo gun. Yeah, just like the 3-pronged dildo death weapon.
Yeah, you thought that the Federation was the only race out there packing dildo guns, but no.
No, triple penetration for her and his pleasure.
Neelix, I enjoy his detective stories. And apparently the Doctor and Seven of Nine, I enjoy their detective stories. Why is it, Joe, that I hate Detective Tuvok stories so much? You've got a really great series of events happening here. They move through it quickly. Granted, you've got the smartest human being in the universe and this AI that's, capable of, superhuman intellect. So they do a good job. Everything's a reasonable jump to conclusion. The clues are there. It works well, and I really like the pacing, how it, they do a nice job of fleshing out a mystery that gets deeper and deeper and does kind of get the hairs on the back of your neck standing up a little bit here.
If you were watching this for the first time on TV and didn't know what it was about, I think that they play the tropes perfect. There's a sinister alien. There's this mystery. Something's going on, right? Like, this plays in so well with just the things that Voyager loves to do so much that, absent a hint of in advance of what it's really going to be about, I think this really structures it well to surprise the viewer of what it actually ends up being about. And I that's effective use of their own tropes to tell the story more effectively.
Right.
It deserves praise.
So there was a meeting that was briefly discussed, or I don't know. I might be getting my order of events out. The second time when he gets his mind wiped in Seven of Nine's, like, you wanted me to help you with this, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Was Seven of Nine there for the initial meeting with Janeway?
No, 7 of 9 is there for the second one after they get the images off the holo emitter and see, like, this person that they don't recognize.
Right, because they go to Janeway and say, listen, this just got wiped a second time, and we're afraid that there might be, like, again, one of these space Mengele elves, hiding on the ship like Chakotay's fucking old girlfriend, who nobody can remember, and might be perpetuating this conspiracy. So it's Janeway on the other side of the table and Tuvok. And speaking of Chakotay, this is the second time this season where we've seen a very interesting staffing decision by Janeway to have a real hush-hush meeting without Chakotay involved, and instead it's her old BFF Tuvok in there. I forget, do Vulcans have anything preventing them from lying?
They don't have anything preventing them from lying, but as they typically don't engage in falsehoods easily. But I mean, Tuvok lied to Chakotay and said he was a Maquis and passed himself off as a spy. So it's like, now they're capable of deception, but they typically don't try to deceive others.
So they lay out on the line, hey, we think that there is an alien influencer who is screwing with my memories. We've got some data files we were able to dig up. There's this missing crew member that's not in any of the databases, which, jumping deeper in, like, so they shot this woman off into space at her funeral and then completely deleted her out of the fucking records of the entire ship. Like, that's super harsh for her. Like, ouch. They lay it all on the line, and Janeway's like, okay, well, I want you to go turn yourself off. We're going to put a force field up around the computer. We need to protect you. And then Tuvok, you go start running security crews and this and that. At this point, I would have thought that she'd be like, hey, 7 and 9, why don't you stick around because I need to talk to you. Hey, spoiler alert, it's us. He goes real off his rails when this thing happens, so we need you to be a team player here and understand that this is for his own good. Like, her lack of including Janeway in this, or Janeway's lack of including Seven in this little conspiracy, is kind of a head scratcher, especially when you consider that, like, Janeway talked to 7 and 9 about the Omega Directive, and if you can talk to 7 about the Omega Directive, I think giving her a heads up on, hey, the Doctor go crazy.
I think eventually she obviously gets told. It just needed that moment that you're talking about where it's like, 7, you remain here. I have something else I want to talk to you about. And you don't even have to see the scene. It's just that later on you find out that's when she got told. Just You didn't have to. You could infer it. They could leave a lot to be inferred in this episode, and that's perfectly appropriate. But they have the doctor go down back to sickbay, and he decides to set up his own little trap, I guess, little safety precaution. He sets up his camera. The recurring hollow imager finally really actually paying off to like capture if someone comes in and fucks with his program, and that he would automatically turn back on and reload his backup memory.
These were some of the most complicated verbal computer commands I've ever seen issued in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And if like you've got that level of versatility, I think the rest of the crew is really underutilizing the camera. Do you remember the old toy line Spy Tech?
Yes, of course.
Like, does this situation not just reek of like a 90s toy commercial? Like, I'm going to put up this camera in the corner. This camera, you get a lot of close-up shots on this thing. It is covered in blinking lights and doodads. So when the perpetrator, i.e. Janeway, does walk in and doesn't see this fucking disco strobe light going in the corner, like, fucking shame on you. Shame on you, Janeway. Yeah, so this is a powerful scene because first he just shows up and he goes to shut himself off. And before he says the words, you see him kind of like stop and clench his fists and roll back on his heels. And there is this very clear look of regret and hesitation on his face because he knows what he's afraid of, right? He's afraid that he's getting jerked around. He's afraid it's the crew doing it. And when he does all this, it's almost knowing that he's disobeying an order because what's going to be laying on the other end. And I love that angst he brings into the scene while setting up this trap, his spy tech trap.
Yeah, he's pissed. And it feeds into the next scene because he gets reactivated after someone has come in and fucked with his memory. Reloads his backup back in, checks his spy tech camera. Sure enough, it's Janeway who's come and done it. It was me, Austin. It was me all along. And so there's the commercial break there, and the next scene is like Janeway, Tuvok, and Chakotay apparently all knowing a whole bunch about sumo wrestling, which is like the most fucking Star Trek thing ever. And casually talking about it while just kind of shooting the shit on the bridge, which is, the kind of thing that would happen because despite the fact that they are at a one space calamity that might kill you a pay period, that does leave another 13 days that, things are pretty calm. This isn't Death Day. I don't have to send a Delta Flyer into a nebula today that is actually a space baby filled with AIDS. Like that's tomorrow. And the doctor looks fucking pissed, right? And comes up and Janeway kind of casually like tries to dismiss him, like, please don't be here for a house call. And he just starts ripping into him of like, oh yeah, how about the fact that you are fucking with my memory, huh? You're the person that's fucking with my program. How about that, bitch? What's up now? I fucking know it was you.
He calls it.
You didn't get away with it.
Specifically, calls it a conspiracy, and the ball's on him to confront Janeway on the bridge of her own ship. Like, Tuvok's like, "Hey, why don't you come with me?" And he's like, "No. How about we just
no? Fuck you. How about we have this out right now? I do not like this.
Do I look like Tuvix? You think I'm just gonna go march off to my death? Fuck you, bitch." The first disrespect I think we really see in this entire situation, and there's two big things. Obviously, one is the fact that we're going to find out that the captain and her administration has been taking it upon themselves to relieve the doctor of memories. I think the bigger issue here is the casual disrespect in that, like, they just seem to do shitty work, half-ass work. Like, you've got Kim will find out's involved. You've got the captain who's a scientist involved. You've got all these resources, and they just seem to do this real half-ass job of brushing this incident under the rug multiple times. Because it's like, I don't know. I think if it's someone important, that you'd put more effort into it.
And I think that leads directly well into the next scene. Well, I take that back. The next scene is Janeway's like, all right, let's head to my ready room. I'm gonna fucking explain some shit to you. And she explains very basically that there were memories that the Doctor has regarding the attack that caused a conflict in his programming that couldn't be resolved. Right? Doesn't explain what it is or why it is, but he says he's not going to explain it to her. She's not going to explain it to him, rather, because it might cause the conflict to happen again. And says, I don't care what you think. Go back to sick bay because we're going to redo everything we did to prevent you from knowing about this. And that's just the fucking end of the conversation. So, and like the next scene after that is like Chakotay and Torres and Paris and sick bay of like, you know, like, okay, tell Tom everything you're working on. He's going to take over for you while we have you offline. And he's like, what the fuck? Are you guys going to tell me what's going on? And they're like, no, we're not. The captain's made his decision and we're ride or die on it.
I want to jump back to this Janeway briefing scene because there's some very important stuff that gets laid down here. Number one is the triumphant return of a soup reference. It's been a long time since the writers have made mention to soup on Voyager. It was a very popular topic back on season 1 and season 2. And in this episode, we get not just one soup references, but there's 2 extended soup references. So very excited to see that back. Only thing we're missing here really is Cardassian Hallway.
Rest in peace, Cardassian Hallway. You've been away from us for so long.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch those earlier episodes to see that reused hallway. There is 2 things that she's gonna drop on the Doctor during this conversation, and one is, she's saying, "I made a command decision," and No, it was the Doctor. It says, you operated on me without my consent, and I would never do that to you, and blah, blah, blah. And here's my big complaint on this episode is nothing
3 episodes human. She did that exact thing.
Nothing human, right? So that's the one with the literal space Mengele
Cardassian
Doctor. Mm-hmm. And B'Elanna Torres is like, no, I'd rather die than this fucking hologram of a representation of the medical database operating on me. And the Doctor specifically was one championing the we need to operate on you regardless of what you're saying. So for him to play that card looks real ignorant in this scene. And that's a shame because I think there could have been some really great tie over and further exploration of this topic had B'Elanna been at all aware of her previous actions in when she was in the Doctor's shoes. And then second, and I love all the anger in this scene. The fucking Doctor like really raging out and very ballsy again of the captain be alone in a room with what is going to become rogue AI at the drop of a pin. We see some real ugly shit out of the Doctor, and I like when she lays on him about like I wouldn't let a crew member commit suicide, and they kind of flesh that in and out, and it's like, well, Janeway, you kind of did, man. We jump back to the Winnie the Q episode, and you lobbied like super hard in the favor of letting someone commit suicide. So you telling the Doctor that you would not give him this information because it's going to lead him down a self-destructive path. Like, I guess it's not really her being ignorant of previous actions out of what was the Winnie the Q episode?
I forget the name of it.
Whatever.
It is forever Winnie the Q to me.
Same.
Sadly, the best Q episode in Star Trek Voyager.
So, I would say maybe it's her ignorant of her own statements from the Winnie the Q episode, but I think more to the point is, again, she doesn't really consider the Doctor actually people at this stage, and it's her having a double standard.
And we finally get to that more explicitly when 7 of 9 comes to visit Janeway in her quarters. And this is where I'm going to return to what I said earlier about why this particular episode elevates to me beyond beyond the prior AI episodes, and I will take this opportunity to expound on that more. In Measure of a Man, the audience already knows that the correct answer is that Data is a person. They're primed to believe that. The episode wants the audience to believe that Data is a person. Maddox is a clear antagonist in that episode. Picard and Data, the protagonists. Riker being forced to argue against something he knows to be correct is tragic. It all works well for the drama of the episode, but there's no tension in what the quote-unquote truth is. This episode is far better at actually creating the possibility for the viewer that the correct answer is not the one you want, which is the Doctor may not be a person, right? They get all the way to the end of the episode before they finally actually allow that to be the answer, like in the closing minute or two. But they have this scene where Seven of Nine comes to Janeway and expectedly is like, Seven of Nine is offended at the fact that the Doctor is being treated like a toaster, to which Janeway says, well, he is. He is a toaster. He is a complicated software program, but he's software nevertheless. He is a functionary. He's not a person. And obviously the growth and journey that Janeway takes is reckoning to the fact that her perspective, which she has held fast to for these 5 seasons, like this is an ongoing thread with her character. And I think that's also part of the reason why it pays off so well. She's never really treated the Doctor like a person. She resisted it at first. Kes is the one that first stood up for the Doctor's personhood, right? And over time, she's allowed this evolution to occur, and we've seen this evolution occur on screen, but she's always been resistant to the idea and somewhat dismissive of it. And here we finally reached an inflection point where this personhood now actually bears a cost. It didn't bear a cost before, except mild inconvenience. Now there is a situation that requires a potential cost to everybody for allowing this to occur. And Janeway is not justified in not allowing the Doctor's sentience to manifest itself fully. And they really do provide tension in the episode of like, maybe that's not possible. And I think that's why it's better.
This is an interesting turn of events to see you highlight that she has kind of let the Doctor go on, like, as you put it, because there was no cost associated with it. It was not like she was taking him lightly. I mean, certainly the Doctor saved the ship on several occasions, the most important one being when he transversed the Hirogen relay and made contact with Starfleet and, everything that went on there. But you take the lack of value that she assigns to him as a person, and then you contrast that with fucking Leonardo da Vinci. And I mean, we're going to laugh about it because concerning Flight, he was a fucking cartoon character, but you look at the liberties and the fucking time she wasted and the stakes in that episode where half of the mission critical equipment had been stolen from Voyager and was on this. And instead of involving like the ship's full resources, she wanted to put the entire fate of the ship in her hands solo so she could let her hologram buddy find his own self-worth and like really facilitate the emotional journey that hologram had to take at the cost of the whole ship, versus this here where she's like, no, fuck it, shut it off, wipe it out. She could have turned Da Vinci off, as Tuvok stated, and they could have gotten like the ship and really knocked this problem out in concerning Flight. And instead she let this thing breathe at the drop of a hat, and here she was very stingy. So that's quite the juxtaposition there. To say that at the end of the day, the Doctor, who has saved the ship multiple times, is just a soup dispenser.
I think Concerning Flight's an all-time bad episode, so I don't want to try. Like, it's worthy of the memes that we have dropped at its feet, but
it's
I
there
don't want.
though. I mean,
I don't want to taint the rest of the character of Janeway and her casual disregard for the Doctor's person to this point by that.
But I mean, she uses Da Vinci as the fucking her confidant, right before she makes the worst decision in the history of Star Trek to ally with the Borg. You know, this is a consistent value that she has in one hologram over the self-aware chief doctor that she has on her ship.
I guess ultimately this isn't conflicting with what I'm saying, though.
No, it doesn't.
It kind of adds to it more than anything else. Like the idea of Janeway's casual disregard is even less justified.
Yeah,
I just think maybe it goes a little too far because that's such a just garbage moment overall. But I see what you're saying, and I what do you think of the overall point I'm making here, though, of like why I think this episode might be better?
No, I agree with you, and the stakes are real. And again, in Measure of a Man, by the end of the episode that Data is going to survive.
Well, before what the actual like, the tension is at the lack of tension is all the way through it. Like Picard's on his side, Riker's on his side. Everyone wants Data to succeed. A nefarious guest star has stepped in to try and deperson this person we know is a person, and they must be defeated by the magic of law. Like that's the episode, right? Like here, the main character of Star Trek Voyager is saying that's a fucking toaster, and I do not care about him. Like that is so much more tension in the episode. I think
I knew that Janeway was going to come around and say, yes, he's a real person. The tension for me was going to be in, is this something that the Doctor is going to be able to overcome? Like, yes, this is a problem, and I need to admit that I cannot make this growth point. And at the end of the day, you did do the right thing and spare me this horrific memory. Or is he going to be able to grow past that? So there is a realistic consequence on the table that I could have seen them go either way with. And that's hard to establish in Voyager because everything's homeostasis and it's rare to see anybody really die or something really bad actually happen. Ultimately, she shuts him down and says, look, I made my decision. We're sticking with it. 7 of 9 stunts on her like 7 of 9 always does. It's a exchange. I'm frankly tired of seeing that, the only person on the crew that can challenge Janeway is 7 of 9, and she's got to always get her with that zinger at the end. Look, you used to be my avatar of humanity and my role model, and now I see that, I could be disposable, and you let me down, Kathy. And she walks off, and then Janeway's stunned that, oh my God, maybe I was wrong. We have a change of heart in Janeway, who goes to meet the Doctor and says, look, we need to talk. She shows up with B'Elanna Torres. B'Elanna walks into the med bay. B'Elanna sees the lights dim. There's this wild look of fear in B'Elanna's eye where she's like, oh shit, the lights are dim. This AI is about to go rogue.
I know rogue AI when I've seen it. Fire up the alarm.
This motherfucker's going to grab my heart. Look, Janeway, I'm telling you, you can't trust these fucking guys. Like, this is another kind of missed opportunity for me. And, there's only so deep and so self-referential an episode can get. I understand it. For Voyager, this is so far out in the weeds of things you would not normally see. Like, you have to watch so many episodes to really understand the depth of what's going on here. But still...
Yeah, let's not undersell that. Let me just pause for just a second on that. Like, pity the person who decides to watch this episode of Star Trek Voyager without the prerequisite knowledge. Like, you'd be so lost to why any of this matters. And good for them. Like, it's hard to do episodes like this when you are the lead show of your network and you are relying on people being able to casually tune into you. Like, this is hard to do, but they fucking did it. Good for them.
I think you could come into this having never watched an episode of Voyager, and it's still a good enough AI with enough relatable...
Yeah, good enough, but there's like a whole levels to this that you miss if you're not like us and just watched every episode.
Right. I mean, I would put this up there with Timeless as a long-term viewer, deep, rewarding experience. So, there's a lot of interaction between B'Elanna Torres's like AI mommy who is constantly trying to advocate and protect various AIs, jumping back to the sex mannequin robots from whatever the fuck that terrible episode was.
Yeah, this sex bots, the rogue
Dreadnought.
AI alien or missile, yeah, and then the alien hologram that was a murder hologram that tried to murder her.
Well, she wasn't really ever buddies with that thing, but
yeah, she was always very suspicious of it.
But there's been more than a few examples of her being willing to afford compassion to robots that other people weren't, and I feel like she's much more of a henchman in this episode, and that was unfortunate. And again, the doctor starts playing the card of like, how dare you just operate on me and victimize me with, treatments that you think are best. Like, I would have, again, loved to see the scene where she confronts him and says, like, you fucking did this to me. How dare you try and get indignant on this? But Janeway says, listen, I had made a decision. I was firm in it, and I did not doubt the decision I made before, but now I do. So I'm going to give you the option that I will show you this forbidden footage if you want to see it. And the doctor's like, yeah, I absolutely want to see it. There's another thing that they don't really take into account here, and that is this is their only doctor. And at the end of the day, like, you fucked this thing up and you have not put anybody through holodeck college to replace him. The only other person that can possibly fill his shoes are Tom Paris, who just spent 30 days in the brig. Ensign Tom Paris.
Right.
Not the most reliable dude out there. And, there are a lot of other things in play. Again, drawing back to Nothing Human, like, B'Elanna Torres is a very valuable member of the crew, and the survival of her is a decision bigger than just she is concerned with. Like, you have to take the entire crew into effect. Like, none of that really gets brought up here, and I think that was a miss.
Finally, we get the flashbacks as the doctor is given this information. And that's where we finally actually kind of get to know who this mysterious person was, who is Ensign Jatal. And Ensign 90s hottie? I don't know. She's like the most 90s chick I've ever seen. If you were alive in the late 90s, the haircut that she has is just classic. The first scene with her is that she's being led in by Neelix to have a birthday party.
And she's like, oh shit, the light bulbs are broken. Call the chief engineer. There's 2 lights that are broken. Call the most important person on the ship to fix these light bulbs.
Yeah, she can throw an ashtray at it, really show her rage. And there's like, hey, surprise, we've got the 7-layer fudge cake out for you. We reused that prop. And, they're having a nice little party for her. And it casually establishes that the doctor doesn't know her very well. Like, it's been months since they had interacted with each other, which is important. She is eventually assigned to an away mission with Harry and the doctor. They're on the shuttle, and they get attacked by the triple dildo aliens, who, one of which shows up, tries to triple penetrate them for their pleasure. Of course, the doctor being a hologram, he's not really affected by it, but the 2 of our human characters here get hit. So Harry and Ensign Jatal go down, and the doctor has to do some quick, call Voyager, run on autopilot. I got to do triage. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck is going on.
When he transported Dildo Guy out, I was like, oh, fuck. Did this crazy ass... And again, we've established, like, the doctor is capable of terrible things. Whatever the rules of Asimov are, do not apply to him. He was willing to nuke the entire space, Napoleon Dynamite, Sleepy Time vampire colony.
Sleepy Time vampires is the best way to describe them.
Napoleon Dynamite vampires, like those. But he was willing to nuke that entire fucking cave from orbit and kill an entire species. Like, this dude does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So I was like, wow. And we've talked before, like, what a big deal it is to transport someone into space. And I guess sadly, maybe not sad. I don't know. He didn't actually. He puts the thing back on its spaceship and it starts firing on the shuttle again.
I think Harry actually says, "Why didn't you beam him into space?" Didn't he? Like he explicitly said that while he was like on the ground bleeding.
He doesn't say why didn't you do it, but the doctor mentions like I put him back on his ship. He's coming back for more.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Harry says like you should have beamed him into space. Like straight up says you should have microwaved him.
You should have put that baby in the microwave. And the doctor's like, no, I only kill people like Tom Paris.
or Tuvix. Well, I guess he didn't kill Tuvix. That was all Janeway. They eventually Voyager shows up, shoots a few phaser shots at the attacking triple dildos, and he beams himself and T'Trol and Harry to the
sick bay, where they get swarmed by medical blue personnel out of nowhere. And I'm like, who the fuck are all of these guys? And if you've got EMS guys standing around ready to triage things, like why does the helmsman need to be in sick bay?
There's just because their science division doesn't mean they actually have medical skill. they're just they're the science guys.
I'm sorry,
they're sciencing nearby, and they decided to help out and then immediately leave.
Am I making biased statements just based on the color of their uniforms? I apologize.
You're using your podcaster privilege to prejudge people on basis on the color of their uniform, Peter. How dare you?
Well, anyways, my comment stands in that. Again, just the ridiculousness that Tom Paris is the fucking backup nurse. Like, Voyager is now in a heated space fight with these triple dildo gun guys. And instead he's, down on boots on the ground with the doctor, as the doctor's going to have to work through some really difficult situations. I want to point out, too, that we'll later come to find out that after exchanging shots, finally the alien race flies away. Again, why does Voyager antagonize and instigate these fights? Like, why was it not Voyager that got the fuck out of there?
I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter for the episode, though, right? Like,
sure,
that we've only got so much time, right, to actually get this done, and it's all we have to know is triple dildo guys have bad juju beams, and they cause a problem. The key conflict of the episode is that both of these people are dying. They literally got shot at the same time. They're dying of the same thing. And ultimately the doctor has only time to operate on one of them to save their life. And he has to make a choice as to who he saves. And he reaches the point in the memory where he has to make the choice, and he chooses to save Harry. He even it's like, I can't make this choice. And Tom's like, you have to make a choice. Like you've got to do it. You've got to make the choice, man. And he makes the choice. He chooses to save Harry, as obviously we know that he did. And he, as he's doing the surgery on Harry, he hears the flatlining of the young ensign behind him.
So the guns that these triple dildos shoot are real nasty. You thought what the hell is a Veron T disruptor was bad news. Like, this thing, it shoots you and it affects you with an energy thing that eats your spine from the base up until it kills your brain. So these guys are going out in the worst way possible. We'll later find out that the doctor makes his decision because he is better friends with Harry Kim than he was Ensign T'Trol. They don't really... was she actually an ensign? Were they the same rank then?
Yes, they're the same rank. They're both ensigns. Both regular Starfleet ensigns.
I guess that really does make them equal. Because I was going to say, they never really play in the rank could have been something in a trauma that EMH would prioritize.
They really go out of their way to try and make it so that there is no difference between the two of them, except one key thing, which I think is probably the most brilliant line in the episode. They show him that memory, and he's like, okay, so I had a patient die. I'm programmed to be able to accept that. I don't know what the problem is here. And they show him, yeah, okay, so this gets a little ugly, buddy. Like, strap yourself in. Like, we're not done yet. And the best scene of the episode to me is when they flash back to the memory of him in the mess hall with Neelix, and they're having a conversation, and it's just normal, like, hey, I need these supplies, we need like these medicinal herbs, can you grow some? And eventually Neelix is like, yeah, I can do that, or I can do the other thing, what do you want me to do first? And being asked to make a choice, suddenly the doctor can't stop ruminating and talking about the choice that he made regarding which of the crew members that he saved earlier. The scene is incredibly well done on the part of Picardo, right? It's completely reliant on him, with like an extra 10% from Ethan Phillips being able to act scared, which he does very well. And as he's like going through this moral conundrum of like, hey, I'm programmed so that the smallest difference of who has a better chance of survival, that's the choice I make. But what do you do when you have two people, exact same circumstances, exact same choice, survival? You have to choose which one. And then he eventually actually says the thing that I think is just seals the deal on the episode. It's like, I chose Harry because he was my friend. I'm not programmed to do that. That's literally what he says. I'm not programmed to save someone's life over someone else because I'm friends with them. But he did that. And I think that line is so important because he's already solved that solves the question of if he's a person. He clearly is, because he made that choice, even though he's not programmed to do that. He has gone beyond his programming, and his friend was dying and he chose to save them, right? And it cost someone else their life. It's a very human thing to do. It's very like not based on heuristics or programming. And the fact that he just kind of shouts it and just states it like that in the middle of this incredibly intense scene is just comes together beautifully.
Absolutely. I am a huge Ethan Phillip fan. I've come around. We've seen a few episodes here and there where Neelix really gets to be tied up in some good emotional stuff, and he was a great foil here to play off of the EMH's outburst like that. And when the EMH or any AI goes crazy, it's scary, and we don't see it on the nice side of Starfleet very frequently, especially out of a beloved character like this. So it was a very potent scene, and I think that the Doctor and Bob Picardo does a really great job of really creating an unsettling thing. Even though he just throws a bowl, it's not like he's choke slamming people and morphing into like T-1000 blade arms or whatever, although he could. It's very unsettling.
Murder robot, never forget.
And I like when Neelix calls security and Tuvok shows up, how everybody kind of devolves into like, oh shit, the appliance is broken, and he starts talking about it, and like the Doctor getting pissed off, like, don't talk about me, I'm right here, and Neelix is like, it's getting crazy, it's throwing things. And Tuvok coming on until eventually Tuvok reaches over and very ballsily, I guess be the right thing to say there. Like, again, the Doctor could do anything to him, right? So reaching over and tapping him on the arm and turning him off was awfully brash. And we see, that's the real conundrum that Janeway has been dealing with, that things really did get ugly in this simple choice the Doctor has made. The Doctor, who is operating well beyond his intended capacity and limits, who has had to go through great actions with the rest of the ship to continue to grow along the trajectory. This science project, really, that's way out of control. There being some real unforeseen consequences, not just within the confines of physical space his program occupies, but now, the experiences and stuff he's brought on, shaping him in ways that go way beyond his original programming. So that brief reliving of memories becomes more than enough to devolve the Doctor back into this frantic state where he flies off the handle again, telling Janeway that she was absolutely correct in taking the action she did, and trying to move to the council where B'Elanna is to purge the memories that he has been shown himself.
They shut him back off, and this is where Janeway starts to have her epiphany of she even says the line, "We gave him a soul," which I think is quite meaningful, obviously, in this context where, where B'Elanna is placed in the foil position to say, I don't know if it's a soul or not, but it's like, well, I mean, how do you account for sentience would have been a better word. We've allowed him to become a person, and we've allowed him to grow, and he made a human choice that went beyond his programming. The reckoning is now that he's at war with himself of who he is now versus what he is. And if he really is sentient and able to evolve past just his base programming, this is the moment, right? This is the fulcrum, the inflection point, the hour of crisis. Like, this is it. This is where he becomes a person or he stays a toaster. And we keep taking away his opportunity to do that because he made the choice. He actually went beyond his programming to save Harry, but he can't reconcile that to the rest of himself. And he has to be able to do that or he's never actually going to be a person. And Janeway finally kind of comes to that conclusion in the room with talking to B'Elanna of, like, we have to realize this is our fault and we did this. And if we're going to treat him like a person, that means we have to deal with the consequences of that too.
They don't go into it, but by invoking the scene earlier in the episode where Seven advocates on the Doctor's behalf, you've taken chances on me, like, these were all liberties. Oh no, they do actually, because she says, you took a big chance on me over and over again, no matter how many times I shot the crew up and tried to take control of the vessel and get you all assimilated. And, Janeway's response to that was, well, you're a human and he's, a soup dispenser. And that's where she hits him with the flip side. So, that is a strong correlation to make there. Again, I would have liked to see B'Elanna kind of advocate a little bit more on the Doctor's behalf, since they are chummy and they do have a strong shared history. And I also would have liked to see some sort of conversation about, like, if we let him go down this path, it's very possible he is going to permanently destroy himself and we are going to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere without any Doctor at all. And is this a decision? Is the Doctor's journey of self-discovery more important than the health and safety of the rest of this crew? Because it's a big fucking deal, and it's one, again, that got tackled. I keep going back to, I didn't know that Nothing Human was going to be as important of an episode as it was, just for comparison to other things. But again, we've seen Janeway in this position before, and she's stuck to her guns. I'm glad whatever the Klingon incense that B'Elanna was burning to dispel the demons of doubt worked to such a degree that she doesn't throw any of this in Janeway's face. But by the end of it, Janeway says we need to back him and let him try and work this thing out on his own and hope he doesn't go rogue and kill us all. So they put him in the holodeck for 16 days?
Yeah, so they say for 2 weeks they've had him running in the holodeck, where they're basically trying to help him resolve this in a way that satisfies his conflict without having to delete the memories. So the idea is, well, if he's a person, he'll be able to finally get past this, and that would kind of prove his sentience, right? Like, he is more than his programming, to the extent that he can actually step beyond it and deal with this issue. But he's not yet being able to do that. 2 weeks, nonstop, essentially mental health crisis. And
do you think people are pissed he's eaten up that much holodeck space?
I would assume that someone is probably mad, because that's how human beings are. But I think the idea is, all these people are essentially alive because the Doctor has saved them at one point or another, whether that's, murdering Kazon along with Lon Suter or whatever, that the half dozen times he's done it. So, okay, let's see if we can help him do this. The final scene is Janeway is the one that's presently in there with him and has been in there for 16 hours. And, now he's rationalizing everything away because, everything's predetermined in the universe and, no other choices could be made except the choices you make, very fatalistic. And he's clearly still not quite there. And Tuvok shows up to relieve Janeway, and Janeway's like, "No, fuck it. I'll just ride it out with him here a little bit longer." And she's reading a book, and the doctor is, inquires what it is. It's called La Vida Nueva. I've never heard of it aside from this context, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's a real book or not. It seems probably is, I would assume. And he says that it's relevant to his situation, and the doctor is essentially dismisses that idea, but then finds that Janeway has fallen asleep, and that Janeway has got a fever, and that she's sick, and in the kind of moment where he finally moves past it, he tells Janeway, like, you need to go take care of yourself. Like, I don't want to be responsible for any more suffering. And, I'll be okay here by myself. I don't want you to be sick here. You go take care of yourself. I'll be fine. I'll call you if I need you. Right?
Yeah, I like that when he stands rigid and it's like the original programming chimes in. He's like, medical emergency. It's kind of like he rediscovers his purpose is the way I took that scene, and like getting nudged back at, like, this isn't about my problems. I've got a greater purpose, and there's people who need me, and I need to kind of learn that I need to evolve and move on. It was good. You mentioned, or you forgot to mention the point where he again specifically talks about soup, which took me so far out of which should have been a very important moment.
Oh, right. It's part of his little monologue of like holodecks and chicken soup or whatever. Yeah.
That the course that led him to picking Harry over Jatral, which terrible fucking use of the name Jatral. How you could pick literally anything. Why does this ensign have to be the guy who killed all the Talaxians?
I think it's actually Jatal, and we're saying Jatral because it's close. Yeah.
Why couldn't she been Susie? This is ridiculous. Speaking to her specifically, why we got to pull someone we don't remember? Like, that also hurt the episode in my book. Like, why couldn't have been Howdy Doody? Why couldn't have been
Samantha
Wildman?
Yeah.
Any of these other characters that we just got a little taste of, like, you had to fabricate someone completely, what was her from TNG that was Wesley's girlfriend? It wasn't Winona Ryder. It was
it was Ashley Judd.
That she's got real Ashley Judd vibes. I was trying to think of her name before when you were talking about her hair. But I feel like that, again, seeing Janeway in distress, seeing that she was harming herself to help him, finding his original purpose and kind of recalibrating himself. It was good. It was a ballsy, risky move by Janeway. And again, I think they didn't really lay out the risk of what she was doing as clear as they should have, but it was good. And again, there was a real chance that maybe the things didn't pan out and maybe they would just have to delete him, and it would be with his knowledge that, hey, this is beyond me and I need to make the pain stop. This really is a spiritual successor, I think, to the episode with his family, because for a while there he wanted to erase the memory of his daughter unfairly dying from a head injury from Parisi squares as inflicted by B'Elanna Torres. Right. But he has to make the human decision to keep the pain with him and grow off of it. And that's ultimately what has to happen here for him to grow again.
Yeah, he realizes that there are people who are willing to harm themselves to help him, and that he can't afford to indulge in his self-pity. It's kind of how I took it. Like, and to the episode's credit, they don't signpost this too obviously. It just kind of naturally happens, and the doctor sort of settles down, right? Because he's he does what any person does. It just took him a while because he's new to it. I have to let this go because it's eating me up. We've all been there at some point in our lives, some point this week, probably, given how 2020 has gone, where you're like, I can't carry this weight. Like, I have to put this down and I have to move on, or I'm just going to continue to just wallow in this misery and it will not be healthy. And that's what he does. That's what ends up actually happening, is that he realizes, oh, Janeway is literally hurting herself to help me. I need to stop, right? Like, this is not okay. And that's what it takes. Again, it's very human. That's not in his programming. But he's already proven he can go past it. He just has to find the thread to do it. And that's what happens. It's perfect. I like it.
Had you been Janeway, would you have done things differently?
I mean, you go all the way back to the fact Janeway was dismissive to begin with. Like, I think it's evident if she had been paying closer attention that the Doctor has long since gone beyond his programming in ways that, suggest real sentience. And her compassion should have been much greater from the start, of like having to help him find a way through that. Like, you caused this a long time ago, and it was already very clear. I mean, the dude was going on dates 3 seasons ago. Come on, man. Like, you had to know that this was already on the table.
I think that, Data wants to be a human. He's an android. He wants to be a human. He's striving to be a human. We don't really ever have any indications from the Doctor where he says, I want to be a human. Even though I am arguably in many ways a superior form of life, I want to settle for humanity. And that means, a painful journey along the way. Like, I think it's kind of unfair sometimes that they don't let him exist as a separate species, a separate race. Like, Worf's not like, I want to be human and I'm going to forsake this extra strength I have, or other alien races saying I'm going to give up these racial abilities I have to try and baseline myself. Like, that is one of the Doctor's strengths. You could say, listen, this is going to kill me. This is an illness or a sickness that's going to kill me. Like, I'm going to flex my right as a hologram, as a piece of AI to delete the poison out of me. I think the captain could be like, listen, yeah, that was actually me who did this thing. I'm going to lay out these circumstances. I need you to see I was being kind of reasonable and just not pick at this thread any further, instead of making her come off as the unilateral decision, draconian Janeway.
I think making her the draconian figure fits so much better, though. It adds more tension to the episode that she's being a little unreasonable and dismissive.
Yeah.
And not like, I think that casual dismissiveness and that how callous it is, and that she just hasn't really given a fuck about the Doctor's personhood. It's just been kind of like this mild inconvenience, adds to this episode in ways that is incalculably valuable.
I want to shout out again the sloppy work that they put in repeatedly. Like, they know the Doctor's smart. They see that they're not doing enough to cover things up. And the fact that they never really up their game to the point where she completely fails to see the spy tech camera in the corner recording her is like, it further puts salt on the wound that, like, they don't take him serious. So right. I guess what you're saying fits in that it's not just a character growth episode for the Doctor, but Janeway as well.
All right. So for next week, we have a special episode. And I know that in all of our other episodes, you have done the read-in for previewing. But I'd like to take that over this week. Is that okay with you, Peter?
I'll let you have that, Joe.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Anyway. From writer Brian Fuller comes our next exciting episode. While Paris and Kim are running their Captain Proton holodeck program, Voyager gets caught in a lair of subspace that's home to photonic aliens. Join us next week as we go through Season 5, Episode 12, Bride of Chaotica!
You get an A+ for effort on that one. That was That was a lot of energy. I take it you like this episode?
This is the best holodeck episode of Star Trek. It's probably the best comedic episode of Star Trek ever. Like, hands down. This is fucking awesome.
There's been some real strong holodeck entries that we've had, so that's real.
This blows them out of the water. Like, this is just a good time. Like, it crushes them.
I want to say again, I'm very sad that we're not going to see the Delaney sisters again.
Yes, I know, right? Because, man,
they fit
what a
in.
miss.
Works good. Photonic aliens. Holograms on the holodeck are photonic energy creations, correct? Yes?
Correct.
So this seems like a real opportunity for chaos here. I like it.
I mean, you have no idea, but it's a good thing in this case. I can't wait to do this one with you next week, Peter. And thank you again to all of our fans who have stuck with us through our little hiatus. We are back. We plan to be back with an episode every week, barring, real life. I don't know. 2020 has been rough so far, so I don't want to make it too many promises. One promise, though, it will make is that we've got a date set in stone, Peter and I, for recording our Patreon exclusive episode on Galaxy Quest. We wanted to tackle that as our next kind of like feature-length discussion, and I think primarily our intention is to focus on it as a work of how it's important to fandom, its portrayal of fandom, as fans ourselves, as people who sit here and do this podcast for an hour plus every week on a 25-year-old television show. What motivates that? And that show and that movie captures that so awesomely. I think it's a very meta, very cool thing for us to review. So thanks to all of our fans who voted for that. And we'll deliver that to our patrons before the end of July. We promise. We really do. And thanks again for supporting us. You can always find us at Gmail at VeaturePlease@gmail.com, on Facebook at VeaturePlease, on Twitter at VeaturePlease, and of course we have VeaturePlease Trauma Support Group. Join us and discuss all things Trek and drop your mildly spicy memes on us. We always love it. And until next week, see ya.